All right, I did it. I liquidated everything. A lot of people didn't think I would, but I did. I know I've been a big advocate of Fundrise over the years, and I still am. I just want to redeploy some capital somewhere else, and I feel like now's the time to do it with the way real estate's headed. I thought it was a great time to liquidate. And to be honest, I've never actually liquidated any money out of Fundrise over the last 2 years. So almost to the day, I've been a customer of Fundrise since October of 21. So it almost was symbolic to have a 2-year withdrawal from Fundrise. But if you obviously clicked on the thumbnail, you know where this is going. What do I like? What don't I like? Where actually am I putting money? Stay to the end and I'll show you. And what are some other alternative investments to get in if you're not interested in something like Fundrise? So if you're interested in something else, maybe it's short-term rentals, maybe it's REITs, stick around for that. Maybe it's just I want to hold money in cash in a money market account that's getting 5.25%, 5.5%. But before I get into that, I would request everyone just to squeeze the like button, leave a comment. It really helps the algorithm. It helps me and my team continue to create videos like this for everyone. I want to empower everyone to have financial freedom. And as I always say, you have to design it in order to get there. But first, let's look at my Fundrise account. Just to know that I'm not clickbaiting people, I actually did go through and do a complete liquidation as of 2 weeks ago. So first, it took about 2 weeks for me to get my money, almost all of my money. I still have a little bit left, and there's an early redemption that's going to be happening in December. So by Christmas time, I should have the other 849 that's in here. Although to be honest, the 849 wasn't a lot compared to the other amount that I got out. But that's number one. Is it can take, if you're looking at Fundrise and you're wondering why I liquidated, that's number one. Is if you need liquidity, which I don't necessarily do. Like I said, I do want to redeploy some capital somewhere else. But if you want quick liquidity, Fundrise is probably not the option for you. Number two, and I'll get into this, is the fees over time were just absolutely, they were absolutely killing me. So if I look at settings here and you go to investment plan, you can actually see, you can build a custom plan, but it's really tough because the fees that they charge you, if I look here, we can do direct investment. I don't know where it says it in here, but you can actually, their fees are 1% of everything. It's 85-15, so it's 85 management and 15 to broker. But that's number two, is the fees that come with this. You're gonna get charged fees no matter what you do. So if you invest in the stock ETFs or mutual funds, whether you invest in REITs, and if you invest in another opportunity, whether it's a competitor or Fundrise, you're going to be paying fees. The only thing you're not going to pay fees on is if you start buying individual stocks. I've done several videos on why for the average investor that's a terrible idea. I'll make sure to link those below, so make sure you check those out. So again, this video is not to bash Fundrise. I don't think there's anything wrong with the overall platform and the idea, but a couple things did stick out to me on top of the long withdrawal fees long withdrawal times and the investment fees. One thing first off, I'll mention outside that is from the time I hit submit to the time I got my money, there was a fluctuation in cost there. What does that mean? It means that when I go to sell a stock, it's $60 a share and I hit that button, there might be a little wiggle room. It might be $59.99 or $60.01, but I'm not getting a huge difference in terms of the price when I go to sell it. Unfortunately with Fundrise, when the time I click sell, there's a redemption time, and luckily I got in at the end of the last quarter of Q3, so it started to liquidate at the beginning of Q4. That's not always the case. If I went to liquidate in July, I would be waiting until end of September to get my money, or potentially end of September. So there's the liquidation piece, but there's also a price variance from the time I go to sell, when they actually sell and liquidate, and then I get my money. Back. The other thing is, when I look at my portfolio, and I had a pretty big variance here. I had private credit, I had venture capital, but most of my money here was in real estate. You could see the returns year to date have been down, and of course real estate has been down over the years. So I mean, I completely understand that. But year to date, down 5.4%. Last year was down 3.9%. 2021 was obviously a better year. And again, by no means am I blaming Fundrise entirely for this. There's things that are outside of their purview. However, the only thing that I've really made money on this year is private credit and venture. And those two things are not associated with the real estate market. So private credit is where I loan out, they take my money, they loan it out to somebody else, and I make a percentage back on that. I get interest on the loan. Great. I can do that in a money market account at 4.85, 5.25, even 5.5, and have immediate liquidity and no price variability on my money. So again, if I'm just going to put money into this, basically a money market account, why would I pay the, first of all, 1% fee? And second of all, why would I deal with price volatility in a fund that isn't really doing anything? And then the second one is venture capital. So 4.8% there, but again, I'm paying 1% of fees and it's not liquid. So those were some of the big reasons I thought, okay, I think there's other places I can send my money. And I do think real estate will bounce back, but I do think it's could be another decade before it ever comes back. And I think it's going to continue to go lower. The real question is, and I'm sure a lot of people ask, is how did I fare on this? Well, minus advisory fees, minus redemption penalties, which you'll see here, and appreciation, I actually ended up losing over the course of 2 years, $313.84. So bad on me, right? No, not necessarily. I look at it like this. I've learned a lot of good lessons. I know what I want from an investment vehicle now, and I don't want. Fundrise support, the opportunities they bring, I think are first class. I think the diversification it brings around real estate, democratizing real estate investing to get it started with as little as $10 into the fund, I think is spectacular, and I think it's opened up the world of investing to a lot of people. Now, what are some of the funds in here that have done well across Fundrise in the last year? Somebody asked me that. Somebody sent me an email about that based off one of my posts on Twitter. What funds have done well? The ones that have done well are, for some reason, this East Coast REIT. Everything else has been down. Let me see if I can get back in. Yeah, I can't. I don't own anything anymore because I liquidated out of it. But this East Coast REIT seems to be doing well, and most of it's in industrial and multifamily. But over the years, it actually has done well. So if you had put in your contribution, your value, your net return, you would have done your net return. You will have yielded quite a bit. On a $10,000 investment, you would have yielded $7,458 over the course of the last 7 years. So again, not a bad investment at all. And these are some of the things that they've acquired. Mostly, what I've noticed is it's last mile distribution for things like Amazon, for Walmart. These are last mile distribution hubs and interlocks or interchanges, as they call them, spread throughout the Sun Belt. Those have done extremely well. Well, I can go invest in some of those at a cheaper rate without paying the fee to Fundrise and have just as much, if not more, liquidity. And if you also notice, the inception date here is one of the oldest funds, which means they squeeze as much value out as they can. Some of these newer offerings that they have within the last 24 to 36 months just haven't had enough time to appreciate. And I can fully respect that. Now, is it just me, or is this just a Ryan problem, or are some other people looked at this? I actually found this article, I think it does a great job. This was posted 2 months ago in August from a guy named RJ Weiss. I'm going to make sure I link this, give him credit down below. But he basically does a really thorough breakdown, more than I've done here, if you really want to get into the nitty gritty of who's Fundrise for, what's it good for, what's it bad for, where are some improvements and some alternatives, and potentially there's some other ways to go. And one of the things he said from a con is redemption fees, like I did. Now, the Pro plan costs $10 a month or $99 annually. That's true. I didn't mention that. I was a Fundrise Pro member. I will be canceling that once I get out of my get the last bit of my redemption squeezed out. But basically he says, this is great for people that already have an emergency fund, that want to get into investing, but may or may not be an accredited investor. You can start for $10 a share. That's good. You get dividend where you can either do a DRIP, dividend reinvestment plan, or you can continue to cash out those dividends and use the funds as you need to. You do get appreciation on capital. Some of the other things it talks about, though, is it goes through REITs. I will say, and I teased this in the beginning, I am going to be investing in some REITs. I want you to go right now down below and comment, what REITs do you think I'm going to invest in? What REITs do you invest in, and why? I have an entire list. I'm gonna tease a little bit here. One of my new videos coming out next month, or maybe at the end of this month, depending on how much time I have, we'll be going over a new portfolio I'm building out of just REITs. So if you're REIT hungry and you're REIT obsessed and you love the dividends that those come off of, I'm going to be adding a video just specifically on REITs, so make sure you stay tuned for that. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, again, make sure you give it a thumbs up, like, subscribe, and give me a comment down below. All right, one of the REITs that this actually talks about is V&Q, and V&Q is on my list, of course. It's hard not to have V&Q on there. So V&Q, if you look at this, it's easier to liquidate, and the funds, I will say right here, you have more liquidity. The expense ratio is 0.12, and Fundrise's is 1%. Now, for those of you doing math at home, that's about an 8x increase in expenses and in fees that you'll pay to Fundrise versus just a REIT. Again, there's some differences, but that's a really big deal as fees are starting to eat up more and more, which is why I think funds like Vanguard or Fidelity or even BlackRock have done well, because their fees are just monumentally low compared to their competitors. Now, there's a potentially more rigorous process that Fundrise does when it comes to purchasing assets, but it just kind of depends. Again, he talks here about liquidation fees, development fees, origination and acquisition fees. So, it's kind of the same thing. Now, if I go down here, the three biggest disadvantages he talks about are kind of the same ones I did: lack of liquidity, possibility of losing money when you sell shares. I talked about the price volatility band when we go through. It hasn't survived a 2008 crash. I do like that because Fundrise wasn't around in 2008, 2009, 2010 when the market completely crashed and real estate took a dive. That's going to be really interesting because that's what we're in right now, and I'm interested to see how it turns out. Probably a lot like 2008. So who should invest? It talks again. If you have an emergency fund, if you already have one, you're maxing out your 401k. You want to use it as a learning tool, or if you want to have a diversified IRA or taxable investment, if you want to do something different, you can look at that. Now, I will say there's a couple other alternative plays I'm going to get into, and one of them you heard me talk about, and one's kind of new. So I am going to be investing in some REITs slowly. But another one I want to talk about is if you're looking for just, I don't own any assets within Ground Floor. They haven't sponsored this video. I don't have any assets or capital deployed with Ground Floor. But if you're looking for more of the short-term rental income, Ground Floor could be a way to go. The other one is Landa, and you've seen me and you've heard me talk about Landa before. I'll put a link down in the description. Hell, I'll put it right up here. You can look at videos that I've done on Landa. I think it's a great platform, but again, much like Fundrise, because it's real estate, I can't stress this enough. Liquidity, liquidity, liquidity. If you invest in something like Landa or Fundrise, or even I'm guessing Ground Floor, your liquidity is going to be strained, as it's going to take some time to get your money out. Final thoughts. Would I invest in Fundrise again? Absolutely. What don't I like about it? Liquidity, hold time, and it hasn't survived a 2008 crash. Oh, and then the fees. What do I like? Ease of use, great platform, interface is great, and the way they vet and the founders, I think, are wonderful. Where they could improve, obviously, let's lower the expense ratio. Let's get it below 1%. Let's get it more somewhat in line with REITs, although I understand they're not the same thing. And where am I going from here? So I'm going to be investing, like I said, in some REITs. We're creating an entire video on it and creating a portfolio. I'm going to share it with everyone. I think knowledge is power. But I wanted you to know, comment down below, what do you think? What REITs do you think I'm going to invest in? Are you investing in Fundrise? If you are, how's your portfolio looking this year? I know it's been rough for everybody, but as always, don't forget to design your financial freedom. Take care. Bye-bye.